Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello and welcome to the main event, part 3 of our look at 2008-09 in the history of the Champions League. We have reached the knockout stuff after 2 episodes on group stages and big thematic debates, and now there are plenty of goals and plenty of action to get stuck into. I'm joined as always by David Edgar. How are we doing?
I'm good, lads. Yeah, very much looking forward to it. I really enjoyed the first 2. This felt pivotal. You know, this is a big year, not just in the history of Champions League, but I would say the history of football worldwide.
For sure. Adam's here, of course. Calmed down after his lecture a couple of episodes ago. How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Lots of goals in this one. Poor old Sporting get a bit of a tanking. It's not something you tend to see in the knockouts. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck in.
And as we do now and again, we rope in the professionals. Usually when Manchester United end in glory, but not always. You know, I think you were on for the Barcelona evisceration, but you are back to discuss another defeat by Barcelona, but maybe more importantly, the story building up to that final in Rome. Rob Smythe, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'd like to say I'm an amateur masquerading as a professional, just to make that clear.
Yeah, okay. Where to start then with the last 16? Well, let's go to Madrid, shall we? Real Madrid, who have had a real tough time, Adam, much to your delight, I'm sure, in getting past this stage. They have not enjoyed this new format for a wee while. Facing up against Liverpool, 2 huge European names. This was billed as probably the tie of the round. There's a couple of others, of course, of great interest. Liverpool nicked a late goal, dreadful defending. I think Sergio Ramos actually guilty of dreadful defending, just not marking Benayoun, of all people, to kind of ghost in from a corner late on at the Bernabeu. All set up then for this tie at Anfield, and well, it was one of those nights, I guess.
It certainly was. I think we know, regardless of who they're playing, what is happening. Liverpool have also got they've always got one of these nights in them, I should say. I think you're spot on with that. Benayoun, he was a very ghosty player. I think he was one of those. He would just sort of play through the lines and just appear somewhere for all the clubs he played at. It was a kind of feature of how he played. Yeah, obviously the highlights here I think would be the 2 goals from Steven Gerrard first of all, but I thought Torres was absolutely
He was astonishing this
unreal in this game. Obviously, maybe there's a bit of a personal thing there as well. Being a Atlético boy, he wants to show Real Madrid, give them a bloody nose. He certainly did that. I just thought I loved him. At this time, he was one of my favourites for sure of this era of Premier League strikers. I just thought he had everything. Those battles that they had with Man United and Vidic was huge for me. I thought he was an absolute colossus, and the fact he just looked terrified every time Torres went near him was probably a testament to him. But yeah, I think you wouldn't have predicted this game, first of all, certainly the result, but I think Torres and Gerrard, we know how well they worked, and it all came off for them in this one. But yeah, still a big surprise, even though, like you said, Madrid are not what they were. A quick look through their team, and there was
I was just about to bring this. That's what I was just about to bring up. I've got in my head, right, that this is the era of Real Madrid between Galacticos and the success of the 2010s, and that they were signing guys like that fella from West Ham whose name escapes me, which says a lot about him. That's him. Him and Baptista and stuff. So I had that in my head. It's not the transfer business isn't very good, and they're trying to look. Listen to this: Casillas, Sergio Ramos, Cannavaro, Pepe, Heinze, Robin, Lissana Diarra, Gago, Sneijder, Raul, and Higuain. Subs who came on: Van der Vaart, Guti, and Marcello, and subs not used: Dudek, Saviola, Metzelder, and Miguel Torres. I mean, that's a pretty good lineup. You've got players in there who've just won the European Championship, will win a World Cup, and then will go on and win another European Championship. You've got some top-class talent there, the likes of Van der Vaart, Marcello. You've got obviously Guti, Sneijder, Raul, Higuain. Lissana Diarra was a super player. I mean, how?
But is this not the Real Madrid story since Hamden, really? That you could rhyme off any of those seasons, a whole galaxy of stars, funnily enough, but it doesn't mean that they all fit, that they all suit one another, and that you've got the manager to do anything with them. I mean, Wandy Ramos is in charge at Anfield. Rob has his hand up at the back of the club.
No, I just want to say that I agree with both of you, but this is flat bang in the middle of a run of 17 wins in 18 league games with one draw, which culminates in a 6-2 doing at home to Barcelona in May. But they're not a bad side.
No.
That Liverpool side scared me quite a lot, actually, partly just because of the prospect of winning the league, obviously, but they were really, really good. And they were just coming into people don't do this to Real Madrid, certainly not in the modern era. You go back and there will be a few, particularly in the Cup Winners' and UEFA Cup, a few absolute hammerings, but this rarely happens to them.
No.
I mean, sorry to do this to you, Rob, but the 4-0 at home at Anfield,
a few days before
yeah, and on the weekend they came to Old Trafford and put 4 past United, and Gerrard kissing the camera, and Vidic was Ferdinand playing that day as well. I can't remember. Vidic certainly was, and Vidic is one of the great centre backs in Premier League history. Utterly roasted by Torres that day from memory. Manchester United did not lose at home anyway, to my mind, at that time. Treble winners, whatever, or not trebles, but double winners, whatever the season before, league and Champions League. They're in this. You didn't maybe know it at times of that season, but you're in this run of league titles, of course. From that point, when is Benitez reading out his list and the whole thing melting down? Has that happened before?
2 months earlier, yeah. And they'd drawn at quite a lot of games because they only lost 2 league games that season. And what happened around them was I think they drew at Stoke that weekend. United had this long run where they didn't concede a goal literally in the league for about 3 months. So they built up a lead. I'm pretty sure had United won, and they went 1-0 up when they lost 4-4.
Yeah, penalty.
They gone 13 clear. Instead, it was 7, and Liverpool had a game in hand, I think. But basically, what happened was it turned really quickly from a procession into like a fight for life, because Liverpool then whacked Villa 5-0. United lost to Fulham. And then there's it kind of turns on the famous Makeda game. Had United lost that game and they were behind with about 10 minutes to go, I think Liverpool would have won the league. Liverpool were certainly the more kind of dynamic team towards the end of that season. But United had built up just enough of a lead by March that they were able to kind of hold them off. Now, look, how much Benitez is rant, and it wasn't really a rant because it came across that way, but he was controlled, wasn't it? He knew what he was saying. He just didn't say it very kind of, I don't know, charismatically, for want of a better word. How much that influenced draws that followed that, I have no idea. But the last 2.5 months of that season, Liverpool were fucking really, really good. And the games weirdly, their season collapsed for a Benitez team on 2-4 draws against Chelsea and Arsenal, which is just mad, really. But it all centered around Gerrard and Torres. Torres was absolutely electric, and Gerrard, that was suited him perfectly.
Gerrard's goal, his second, the third, was absolutely outstanding at Anfield that night. Adam, just a word on Torres, because he was sensational that evening. He has just won the European Championship. Looks like he's set fair to be Spain's golden boy up front. Obviously, with a player like that, Michael Owen is in the same postcode, I guess, different in other ways, but it just takes one bad injury to completely kind of derail a career. But there must have been talk at that moment that Liverpool's not the end of his line, and he's going to go on to be one of if not the best player in the world. Certainly at the top end of the pitch.
Oh, 100%. I don't think that was a big issue. I feel like, I'm sure Rob or yourself might correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like there was a period here where, with the English club dominance, with the money, etc., starting to pull away, there wasn't a lot of transfers between the big clubs. I remember being sort of visibly shocked when he goes to Chelsea. Sorry,
Chelsea.
I just never seen it coming. It happened again recently. I guess there was a good period, I think, of 4 or 5 years before Man City started selling everyone, and Raheem Sterling was doing his little tour of clubs that will have him. But yeah, I remember thinking at the time, where is he going to go? Serie A, no, not at this time. Potentially Bayern Munich, who are starting to, maybe, as we said, get a semblance of getting their act together soon. But if they really got the kind of money Liverpool would have been asking for at that time, and then you're left with Spain, and being someone who has said he's an Atlético Madrid guy and this and that, you'd think Barcelona might be the obvious, but then you see what Barcelona are doing this season, and you think,
it's just not a space for him.
Is this something he's really going to do?
Here was the big concern, even then, right? Because I remember, even round about this time, Rob's colleague Sid Lowe on The Guardian saying, see where he is in a couple of years, because he was in the Atlético Madrid first team at 17, and he played. He played constantly. Then he played up front on his own for them. Then he goes to Liverpool and he plays up front on his own. And his point was, there are a lot of miles going on these legs. His style, remember, was he was a worker. He remember the amount of time down the channel runs he would do.
He's not a prima donna.
No, he was a worker. He would do you a shift. And even then, 2008, 2009, I remember said, look, just a wee note of caution. And it sounded odd because, he was, 25, 26. His point was, a bit like Rooney, that there are a lot of kicks to these ankles. There are a lot of miles on these legs. And we've seen it before. And of course, it worked out great for Liverpool. They got the very best out of him, and 50 million quid. And it's not his fault they decided to spend 35 million of that on Andy Carroll. But he really did work. He did more in that 10-year period, is what I suppose I'm trying to say. He did more running at a higher level, because it's the top of La Liga, then it's the top of the EPL and in the Championship. And that's why at Chelsea, plus Chelsea, strikers graveyard if your name wasn't Didier Drogba. But this night he was sublime. His work rate, he just terrified them right from the start. And we know that it's a cliche, but it is true. Something wild can happen at Anfield when the crowd gets going, and there's something in that club's DNA in this competition. That night, you looked at it and thought, oh my goodness. I was going through some old match reports in preparation for this, and there was a comment from a Liverpool fan saying, we'll fall short in the league, but I really think we'll win the European Cup. And, that is the attitude, I think, that was quite prevalent back then. You just didn't feel that they had the quality and depth. They had a great midfield, they had a great front line. The defence that night, Arbeloa, Skirtle, it's okay. But in a cup competition, Benitez's record, Liverpool's record, at this point, this is one of these results that did get the whole of Europe saying, my goodness.
I think that's a good point about Martin alluded to the injuries with those type of players. But your point about the appearances as well, David, I think it's just something that people forget. Wayne Rooney, like we said, I think Wayne Rooney said himself recently, didn't he, on the overlap, that never the most dedicated of trainers. And I think as well, when you're physically ready as a 16-year-old, in the case of Torres, in the case of Rooney, you've matured quicker. You're going to get more games earlier, but also I think your physical decline happens earlier as well. I think must just be a fact. You must only have 10, 12 years of sort of peak fitness as an athlete or as a footballer before it goes, regardless of when it comes. But David's point is spot on. I think before he was 27, or at least 26, 27, he'd made nearly 400 appearances, nearly 250 for Madrid and 150 odd in for Liverpool.
Yeah,
it's mad.
At such a high level, you know, it's not even like a guy who's come through at such a high level, being the man. As I say, two teams who use one striker up front, so there's a lot of, and as I just increasingly think that footballers are like cars. It's not age, it's the amount of miles that go on the clock, and he put in a hell of a shift. But when he was in this period, I know what Rob was saying, because you looked at that side and you thought they are very set up to win this. You know, they defensively sound. They've got a manager who's excellent at setting them up in one-off occasions. They have Anfield. They certainly looked a decent bet, I think, to at least reach the final.
It's just funny you mentioned, and it's true, that Liverpool have this always a sense of destiny. Obviously, it doesn't happen every year. It can't. But with the Champions League, that this is their kind of thing. But I mean, look who they're playing here. They're playing the European Cup Champions League side. Something just is not happening despite the heritage. And perhaps looking for that 10th, because that's what everything's about now, is maybe one of the other reasons why they are stuck in the last 16. They cannot get past this. It's going to be an absolute neurosis for a few years. But Torres, well, he'll get his medal as well in the most unlikely of circumstances. But that's plenty down the line as well. Davey, Chelsea versus Juve would have been reasonably interesting.
Right up my street.
Talked a wee bit about, Juventus are back, but are they back really? They're their league position is semi-creditable, but they're not quite the force they were. Still made for an interesting game, and Chelsea won the first leg 1-0, early goal. But the return in Turin, they had to keep fighting, and it took they had to equalise twice in a 2-2 draw, but big Drogba yet again doing the biz late.
Yeah, he was superb. He gets a goal in the first leg, which is it was a Martin game. You'd have loved this. It's exactly see if you were to sit and write down what you consider a first leg of a big game to be. It's this. It's two good sides who are both aware you can't win it in the first leg, but I
just want to see one goal, David. I mean, anything other than that is it's like jumping out a plane.
Yes,
without a parachute. It's absolute nonsense to be.
That's
that
two teams who are like, okay, Chelsea start really well, and Juventus then think, right, we need to muck in here. Let's not worry about what we do at the other end for a bit. They managed the game really well. Second leg, I did think that Juventus needed an away goal here, because I fancy Chelsea to score over there. And Juventus are excellent on the night, I've got to say. It's a cracking game. They got off to a brilliant start. You Quinta within the first 20 minutes, and you're thinking, next goal here. And I know that's a cliche at the best of time, but had they gone 2-0 up, it would have been interesting. Essien, who I loved, I just thought was a superb modern footballer. He was a guy that, people remember him as this kind of combative midfielder, which he was, and discipline and his power and his pace, but he could play. You couldn't play for the Chelsea side if you couldn't play. Del Piero gets him back in with a penalty. Like you, Martin, I've almost forgotten he was kicking about at this.
He's still not just kicking a ball, but he scored
well.
quite a few goals in this, certainly the group stages anyway. He's still quality. So good, man.
He's one of these players. I've never met anyone, unless you're a direct fan of another club, who didn't love him. Not even quite like everyone who watched football liked him a great deal. But then
it's possible on that maybe he's slightly overrated as a result, because people just love him. They love the idea of the kid coming through. Because I've seen a bit of criticism about his career, just cold, analysis. Certainly internationally, well, not. I don't think it's in question. Internationally, there is a question mark there for Italy. I don't think he really turned up often enough, given the talent for Juve. Of course he did, but he is just so lovable, and people want to get behind the icon and the aura, I guess.
If he had moved, and he should have, by the way, if he had moved and if he'd gone to United, for example, in 2006, when Ferguson asked him, and he would have got that Champions League, you're right. It's the Alan Shearer thing, isn't it? It probably means more to him to do what he did where he did than to go somewhere else and do it. But he puts them 2-1 up. They're still losing on away goals with 20 minutes to go, which meant we were fair set for a good finish. Chelsea are holding them at bay, but Juve are very much in this. They're throwing everything forward. As they begin to commit more men forward, sucker punch, and it's done, because they are not scoring 2 goals in the remaining 5 minutes. This was an excellent heavyweight tie. This is exactly what you would want between two sides who had genuine ambitions to go and win this trophy. You've beaten finalists from the year before. You've got Italy's biggest club. I know that'll annoy some people, but it's true. And it was exactly what you would want to be. 2 extremely watchable games in different ways. The second one is more explosive. As I say, Martin, if you are writing a novel based on a last 16 tie in the Champions League, I think you select this one.
Yeah, there's a bit of an England-Italy thing going on with this draw. Dave, I'll stick with you briefly. Arsenal-Roma. Roma have had their issues with English clubs in knockouts. Not quite eviscerated here. It goes to penalties. I think the only last 16, possibly the only knockout game in this Champions League to go to the dreaded shootout in Rome. It's 1-0 either side. And it goes the distance, 8 penalties each year?
Yes, Arsenal missed their first and then score all 7. Eduardo is just a cursed figure at Arsenal, isn't he? Eduardo, the whole, it's a byword for sadness when you think of his Arsenal period, obviously wrecked by injuries. But 2 misses from Vucinic misses their second, and then Tonetto with the last one. John Arne Risa, of course, remember him? He's at Roma at this point. Yeah, Arsenal won the first leg with a penalty. They should have won it by more. And all, it wasn't 8-0. It wasn't a United-esque battering, but they should have put the game to bed. Concede early. Again, I felt Arsenal would score over there. I wonder if they did, but in the end, they don't manage, and it goes all the way through. And it was one of these games, Martin, that the longer it went, the less likely we were to get a goal.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 2 sides that from about the 70th minute went, if we can get one, great, but we're not conceding one. We'll take our chances. Penalties is the worst that we're going to end up in. So after criticising Arsenal for underachieving, I should give them a bit of praise. What I will say is, though, this Arsenal team should have taken care of this Roma team far more straightforwardly over 2 legs than it did.
And that's a sign as to what's to come. Sorry, Rob.
If anyone can be bothered, just pause, watch the penalties, Roma Arsenal, pause, and I think it's Arsenal's 5th one. The keeper, he's almost on the 6-yard line. He does like this 2-foot jump out of his goal. Different times and all that.
I can understand why they brought that in, because if you can narrow that angle, you've got a hell of a much better chance to save it. And keepers did exactly that technique that you said, where it was part of their technique. As the guys running up, you take 2 leaps forward if you can and get really close. I agree that keepers should be forced to stay in the line. What I object to is stuttery run-ups, and this idea of but so long as they don't stop. Yeah, but if they slow down to, I don't think it's fair either. So, but penalties were now, the way that the law has legislated, they want more goals. They don't want penalties saved. They want them to go in for more goals. But it's actually ludicrous. And he keeps getting further. He's like Bob Beamon by the end up.
One of the teenagers. Rob, Jose's back. This time, he's back in England. He's at Old Trafford. Inter drew United out the hat. United visit the San Siro 2 years after a bit of a doing. Yep. Different scenario here. 0-0. Now, I remember the chat certainly was no away goal. Very dodgy, and Jose will be happy with that. He effectively doesn't need to win here. A 1-1 or whatever will do the job. How good were United on the night? Because my memory was pretty convincing.
So I'm not sure about that. I called a mate this morning actually just to double check my memory, and he's kind of tallied with mine, which was that before the first leg, we were quite worried just because it was Mourinho more than anything. But United actually played so well in the first leg. They didn't create a million chances, but they really dominated and just looked so superior. Interestingly, Rooney was left out, which is another of Ferguson's little tinkerings in Europe. To the point where 0-0 scoreline actually had been a problem for United a lot. Monaco being a great example, Real Madrid in the even greater example, in fact. But it wasn't that worrying. I would actually argue that Inter played better in the second leg and had a fair.
But that's the fear, though, right?
No, I know.
Jose would have been quite happy
totally.
leaving work that night with 0-0.
I'm just talking about the mood at the time. I don't think there was the same trepidation there had been. Even the previous year when they drew 0-0 in Barcelona. And so they won 2-0. It looks comfortable, but it's not that comfortable. Vidic scores early, which gives them a bit of breathing space. But of course, 1-1 puts Inter through. I remember Ibrahimovic put a really good shift in that night and Inter were threatening. And I think United's second goal was just after half time, and that kind of kills it. United did that a lot that season. The previous year, they'd often, not so much in Europe, more domestically, absolutely smashed teams off the pitch. In 08-09, for whatever reason, and it might have been kind of fixture pile-up, it might have been Ronaldo, wasn't quite the same. They were often kind of, as the phrase goes, doing just enough, and that's kind of an example of that. But I do think they played, the 0-0 in Milan was one of their best away performances in Europe, I think, under Ferguson, in terms of controlling the game, which they didn't do very often away to really big teams. Having said that, Inter kind of weren't ready, were they? It had been a year later, I think it would have been a much tougher game. Well, that's a really obvious thing to say, but yeah, United were just a little bit better, and I think they also had aura and kind of comfortable in their own skin, and the early goal kind of sets it all up, and they were fairly comfortable.
And Ronaldo starting to
he needed that to
open his legs, as they say in athletics.
Yeah, because he didn't want to be there. Obviously, he'd agreed this kind of uneasy pact to stay for another year. Couldn't really get going domestically unless there was a lot on it. So a good example would be in April, they were 2-0 down against Spurs and they ended up winning 5-2, and he inspired that and was rampant. Most of the season, he didn't really want to know domestically, to be honest. I think he only scored in one away game at West Brom in the league, but of course in Europe, totally different. That was the one thing that really got him going.
There was that whole chat about only one win against Mourinho up to this point as well. I remember, was it 12, 13 games potentially, just the one win? But I like the quote from Fergie about it. He said I can't remember it exactly, but it was, not too bothered about it. It proves I'm not infallible, which was, I guess, a good way to do it. They were right in the middle of a very great run as well at this point, and there was a bit of a stutter, wasn't there, after this?
And particularly defensively, they like I said, they almost didn't concede a goal for about 3 months. It was ridiculous. And also with a weakened defence, like a lot of the time, Ferdinand was injured, Johnny Evans was playing centre back, with people filling in. They almost kind of doubled down on the previous year, where I still think the defence won the Champions League, even though, of course, we remember the attacks; they were so brilliant to watch. It was the same kind of issue, really.
Okay, pick the pace up.
Just before we go, I don't think I can ever look at these two clubs playing again without thinking about dear old Rod Hull. It will forever be the Rod Hull derby to me, this match.
Fixing his aerial, bless him.
I just would like to say to him, if you're listening from up there, Rod, it finished 1 each.
They did it.
He was at a function earlier that day with Giles Brandreth moaning about his aerial. He wanted to watch the game that night, and Brandreth had just got up and fucking fixed it. Then just got up and yourself. Stop moaning. Well,
he should be charged. Then I hope that there's a subsequent investigation.
Is that manslaughter?
That's at least a beloved children's entertainer taken from us by Giles Brandreth. That there is no end to that man's depravity.
Yeah. Very annoying. Anyway, let's pick up the pace. Away goals, what for Porto? Adam, Atleti and Porto played out a 2-2 draw in Madrid, and then a very proper 0-0 draw in Porto. That just looking at bits and pieces, is a very, very Champions League knockout tie of the era, really.
Oh, it definitely is. Good to see Alessandro Lopez popping up there. He was always one that I kind of thought maybe he had the potential to go a little bit higher than where he was. I remember the move to Lyon, which I think is the summer coming up potentially, or the summer after that, as a bit of a sideways step, because Lyon are kind of just starting to come down the way. He was one that I'd like to have seen move to a top 5 club for sure. Atlético we gave a little bit of love to last week, didn't we, in terms of Diego Forlan and some of the good players that they had there. I think I'm going to say, is it a shock for me? Probably not. It's one of those, it's a coin toss, like you said. It feels like they've probably played each other a million times now and no one's really got the upper hand overall. But yeah, I think credit to Porto for getting those 2 away goals and coming back and just sort of stifling it, because that Atletico Madrid team were absolutely no mugs.
They're just such a tournament team, Porto.
Yeah.
David, their offense, Panathinaikos, top in that group, getting an away goal in Spain against Villarreal, taking the lead. All set up for yet another shock, but the Spanish side came through in the end 2-1.
They did indeed. And I sometimes, again, think that on paper, if you're Panathinaikos, you draw Villarreal and you think, great, we've avoided bigger names. But they're absolutely probably the last sort of team you want to play against, because they are going to say to you, we're quite happy for you to have the ball. Villarreal are not going to be under that pressure. There is you can't utilise things that have worked for you in the group stage against so-called bigger teams. Against Villarreal, they will not let you. Giuseppe Rossi gets the equalising goal. It's our old pal Karagunis for Pana, penalty spot. I really liked Rossi. Another career that was, I mean, he was at United, wasn't he? To kick off with, Rob.
Yeah.
Him and PK were seen as the big two of that kind of generation, or like group.
He was really talented, but wrecked with injuries. I mean, really, his career, and he was one of these guys that he never picked up a groin strain. It was always something serious. But yeah, Pana set up, away goal, take them back there. Bagaza scores just after half time. No panic, they get one back quite quickly. Then it's a little bit tense. Villarreal at this stage now, the away goal favours them. And it's Llorente who pops up with the winner. And as I mentioned there, Villarreal are a side who are quite happy then to sit in and to defend. There's a calmness about Villarreal. I think that's the key thing in this time frame. Martin, you and I talk a lot on air and just when we're talking about football. Clubs who know what they are.
Yeah.
Villarreal,
very comfortable in their skin, aren't they?
Yes, they have an absolute sense of who they are, what their strengths are. And I actually think that in Panathinaikos' case, it might, now obviously if they'd ran into Liverpool at this stage, they would have lost, we know that. But I think that this is psychologically a bit of a different challenge, because you look at this and rather than against the odds, lads, let's go and do this, which you should probably feel if you're playing a La Liga side, if you're not from a top 5 league in the latter stages of Champions League. There is a sense among your supporters of, we can do this, we should do this, who are Villarreal, I look at their squad. But as I say, that calmness, Villarreal never panic at any point over these 2 legs, and in the end, they get there with a bit to spare.
Rob, Lyon Barcelona looks again an intriguing kind of tie. And again, the first leg is a proper European first leg, 1-1, everything kind of balanced, set fair for the Nou Camp. And Barcelona 4-0 up with 2 minutes to go before half-time.
And wasn't the first leg away?
Yeah.
All right,
yeah, I said that, yeah.
Sorry, what did you say? Say that again?
I'll do it again.
Sorry. I was just thinking of Juninho's free kick.
Rob, Lyon Barcelona is one that's set up very nicely. I think at the time, a lot of interest in that one. And again, that first leg looks perfectly set in Lyon 1-1, looking absolutely finely balanced for the second leg in the Nou Camp. And Barcelona 4 up with 2 minutes to go before half time, and the game is very much over.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning Juninho's free kick in the first leg from miles out on the left.
Yeah.
This is the era when he was. I know there was that joke about who was the guy on ITV who said that Juninho had copied Ronaldo's technique or something, which is ridiculous. Yeah. And then what is interesting, I think, about what Barcelona do this season, and we'll come on to it more, I guess, in the final, is that at the time it feels, you think, well, that's not going to happen again. 4 up half time of the game like that, that's a one-off performance. And it's not. It's just kind of what they increasingly will do to everyone. At the time, though, there were still doubts, weren't there? It kind of goes all the way through to the final as to whether they were just kind of good time Charlies and all that. But yeah, you look. Some of the goals are just so smooth, aren't they? It would be great to go back and just see them through the eyes of the time and remember exactly. We all have an idea, but remember exactly what you thought of them. Are they just a good team who happen to have a really good day? We obviously know now they're far more than that. But yeah, Lyon still had a really strong reputation at this point, didn't they?
Yeah.
But Barcelona they just routinely would start taking teams to the cleaners, like good teams as well.
Finally then, Adam, we've talked a lot about finely balanced ties here, and certainly after first legs, I think 7 out of these last 16 are nicely placed after the first leg. What the fuck is going on with Sporting and Bayern? 5-0 for Bayern away, and they follow that up with a good measure with a 7-1 tanking at home, 12-1 in aggregate. That's not professional football. They're on the take or something, because that's just this is just a carry on.
It absolutely is. I can imagine you grimacing as each of these goals go in. But yeah, I think, like I said, Bayern are a little bit away from this treble, potentially sort of starting to get their act together. They're in that period we mentioned last week where Thomas Muller's coming in. Neuer won't be far away. We are 15 months away from Dash reboot exploding, as David said last week, with that 2010 World Cup. I guess good teams, big teams can do this to teams. I find the whole Portuguese teams thing baffling. Outside of Porto, I just mean in terms of how up and down they are. Outside of Porto, I think Sporting and Benfica, considering the size of them, considering it's generally accepted to be a 3-horse race, albeit maybe more Porto Benfica as the two. It is mad how they can dip sometimes and just have crazy seasons. I find it remarkable, really. I guess possibly there's something in because they are these development clubs now, and they're right in the period of this now. Really, if you think after Porto's team that won the UEFA Cup and the Champions League got sold off, they are now becoming this now. So maybe there are just barren years while they're waiting on someone coming through the academy. They're waiting on.
But they've qualified. I mean, they're here though. I mean, I get that maybe in the group stage, but they've made it. And as Martin said though, they could go out to Bayern Munich. They could lose 3-0 and 3-0. It's 12-1. I mean, that can't happen.
No, eight different scorers for Bayern, which I think is probably worth noting. Ribéry, Klose, Tony, Podolski, Polga, Schweinsteiger, Van Bommel, and Müller. Nice to hear Luca Toni. He was just a nice chap and a very good finisher. And I'd kind of forgotten about Luca Toni, and it's the joy of this show. We're brought together with old friends.
I always think that Luca Toni had a huge case that he should have taken to Bayern Munich. He should have taken them through the courts for his treatment at work when at halftime during a match, a very angry Louis van Gaal walked into the dressing room, started screaming at his players, said they lacked balls, pulled down his trousers and showed them his testicles, and as he turned round, whipped them directly into the face of poor Luca Toni, who was too stunned to respond. But if I was an ambulance-chasing lawyer, have you been thwacked with a legendary Dutch manager's penis? If so, call now. We can get you the settlement that you're due. But no, I mean, this is a stunning. And again, I mentioned that Liverpool result made me go, oh, you cannot see this, even allowing for it's not a top 5 league team. 12-1.
They both finished second that season in their leagues, albeit Bundesliga's bigger, but yeah, makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean,
even when you compare it to the group stage, I know it's not the trickiest group stage in the world, but they get through unbeaten, and they win 4 games, but they only score 8 goals, and they also concede 8 goals as well. So it's a bit rare, I guess, to get through on such a 6 points, if you like.
I think the first leg's 0-0 till the 42nd minute. So while I don't know to run a play, you can imagine this is going all right. 0-0 at home is not the worst. 12 goals later.
3 halves effect. This is the other thing is that you would expect after the 5-0 at home, and that they lose their head a bit there. That's happened. You would think that Bayern maybe would get to 2-0 and go, right, lads, we've got a game at the weekend. Nope.
No.
Straight. I sincerely hope that when Moutinho scored, they celebrated.
Yeah, top over his head. Quarterfinals then. Well, much to your delight, Adam, Bayern get a bit of a taste of their own medicine then, because they go to the new camp and lose 4-0. Again, Messi, Eto'o and Henry seem to be scoring all the time. It's 1-1 in Munich. It does not matter, obviously. That's 2 big hammerings that Bayern have dished out to good European teams.
4-0 half time again.
Yeah.
They were brilliant. I mean, it was set it to music and put it in an art gallery that first half. They were incredible.
So is Rob's point contemporaneously that, they are capable of those half-hour spells, that kind of blitzkrieg thing, or was it, that it's their year now, they have something special that maybe others maybe don't have?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because you're still in the back of your head thinking rookie manager. I know Madrid aren't doing the best, but they're still Real Madrid. That long run in the league, obviously we've not quite reached the 6-2 battering in the Bernabeu, which I think probably confirms to everyone. But you're still not thinking like this is going to be a treble for this guy who was managing the reserves last year. There's no way. I defy anybody. I'm not even sure you're really getting the analysis of it. Rob might know more of this. I'm not sure you're even getting the analysis of how he's doing it at this stage or what's happening. There's just the sheer shock of it, I guess, and it's only later. That's what Rob's point earlier on really got me thinking. How did you feel at the time? And it's how do you split those feelings of what you felt at the time versus what you've learned afterwards? And I think it's really difficult to do. So it's easy to say, oh yeah, it was always happening. Messi was always going to jump 15 feet in the air and score in that final. That's just the way things worked. But I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think as well that the bravery part of it as well. Again, there wasn't outside of United. I don't remember many teams going with more than a couple of academy players that we knew of that were getting this hype and they weren't afraid to do it. So I think there was always maybe in the back of my mind thinking, okay, he's done quite well here. He's got really young players coming in. He's that bravery to bring in Busquets and Pedro. Yeah, they look great, but they're young players. I'm sure once they come up against a bigger team or a better team, sorry, I should say, a more experienced team, they're going to get a bit of a hiding. But it just never seemed to come. I think they had that perfect balance this year of Henry coming in. I think we can maybe understate his influence because he was exactly what they needed. They needed a superstar who didn't act like a superstar, I guess.
Who was selfless, who would do what the manager, famously Henry says, he told him, if you do that again, you will be substituted. I want you to stay in the area of the pitch I've told you to stay in. Henry will take that. We know a year later Ibrahimovic won't. Will not.
Exactly. I think that's
heart. Henry, you're absolutely right. I think it's you're spot on. I think it's an excellent point that here was a guy who was a superstar. I mean, yeah, it still is, right? Thierry Henry, one of the greatest strikers ever played. He goes to Barcelona and his manager says, you operate in this quadrant of the pitch and this is what you do. And he does it. And the rest of them see him doing that. And it's got to do a lot, not only for the team, but also in the eyes of those younger players. It's like, he's listening to him as well.
You just come back to our discussion a couple of weeks ago about this Pep Mourinho divergence, what they both have in common, and I guess what these managers that will come after them, some of these guys that are at the top for a long time, Klopp, Simeone, for example, they get guys to do what they want them to do. Big players, big stars, big egos, because they're able to sell a particular plan, a particular vision. Mourinho loses that ability clearly further down the line, and probably goes to the club that absolutely cannot sublimate itself to a manager's will. But that seems to be the big characteristic of the auteur manager, or the auteur coach, really, because I think there is a distinction between the coach and the manager, and these guys are, this is my vision here. One might be a wee bit more conservative than the other and a wee bit more pure than the other, but this is how it's going to be, and I need you. And you get Samuel Eto'o, as we know, next year, doing whatever Mourinho wants to do, and he's not exactly a wallflower, but these guys just have such charisma and personality that players are going, yep, sure.
Yeah,
I think it's a really important point. Yeah, I was just going to say, David, before you come in, I think it's sometimes seen as a criticism. I think it's strange. It's never a criticism of someone like Mourinho that the players do everything that they tell them to do. But I remember lots of criticism of Pep Guardiola during the early months at Bayern Munich, where he just had all these kids at Barcelona who would do everything that he told them to do, and that was somehow seen as a bad thing, given that he won ridiculous amounts of trophies. You never hear of that with the more sort of hardline managers like a Mourinho, like a Ferguson. There's never that, how dare he have players who do what he wants them to do. I think the key thing for me in this, obviously, again, we spoke last week in depth about it, so I'm not going to go into great detail, but some of those tough decisions, Ronaldinho, an absolute hero, even an absolute icon there. Messi looked up to him, all that sort of stuff, but there was probably a bit of, this guy isn't going to conform to what I want to do. A bit of, this guy can't conform to what I want to do physically. Yeah. He's just not that guy. Too much of a maverick. I've probably got someone on that other side of the pitch who is going to be the maverick piece that we need on that side, but he's still willing to do the hard yards. He's still willing to run. So bringing on Henry for that. Deco, like you said, is exactly the same. That personality, the type of floaty number 10 that he was, it's not going to fly at all. The front three that we've got this year for Barcelona, for me, is far and away my favourite. It's probably one of my favourite front threes of all time. I loved Eto'o. Again, an example of, it doesn't matter how, if you're able to play it's fine if you're able to play the team. It's fine if you're able to do all the running. You can contribute big time. If there's friction there and it's rubbing off on the team, or it's causing a negative impact, then you will be asked to leave. It's not a case of maybe the Ronaldinho piece where he wasn't a good fit anymore, the Ibrahimovic piece where he definitely wasn't a good fit on and off the pitch. Eto'o was a perfect fit for me for this team, 100%. It just came down to maybe not wanting to do those hard yards that Henry did want to do, and then obviously, like we know, he's a bit of a personality off the pitch as well. So I can imagine there was a lot of friction in that sense too. So it's really interesting, I guess, the combinations there. But ultimately, it's a coach who knows exactly what he wants to do, and he wants players who are on board with it. And I don't think there's much wrong with that, to be honest.
No. Conscious of time. Let's move. Oh, sorry, Rob.
Just very quickly, I agree with all that. The thing that really impressed me at the time, and even more so now, is the speed of all that change. How decisive or straight. It's not like I'll give him more half season. It's just given where he was as a manager at the time, no matter that he's a Barcelona legend, that takes some balls. And the other thing, what Adam said is really interesting. I agree that when kind of creative managers, for want of a slightly better word, kind of are really strict in their principles, people slightly frown upon it more. I don't know. Is that like the football equivalent of woke nonsense? In that, if you're like a real hard man, defensive manager, it's absolutely fine, but if you're an idealist.
Yeah, I think it is actually. I think woke nonsense, although you've used it in jest, probably is, because I used Oliver Cromwell as a bit of a joke a couple of weeks, but with a hardline, creative hardline, there is a bit of a puritanical streak there. There is a bit of an aesthetic above result streak. I'll trust the processes, the kind of camouflage for that, but also when you don't get those results, but we're doing something that's bigger and more important, right? And we don't compromise principles. The hardline conservative is pragmatic. It's about results and do this and we will get this. I don't care if it's not pretty. And I guess just a toughness. There's a grittiness to that and an earthiness that people probably in sport will apologize. Well, not apologize for, but they'll certainly give license to.
I totally agree. Well, Guardiola would always say that he's a pragmatist as well, right? That he doesn't play this way because whether that's true or not, I mean, I'm inclined to believe it. It's not because he's an idealist. He just thinks that is the best way to win football games. And
it's Brendan McCullum, right? It's whatever you have at your disposal. This is the best way to use them. But we could be here all night with that.
He's absolutely not. I'm happy to be here all night on it because he's absolutely not an idealist at all. I completely agree. The main aim of the approach is I'm going to keep the ball so you can't get the ball and you can't score. So it's not quite a negative mindset, but it's 100% pragmatic in that sense. There's the great quote from Ferguson, which we'll come on to in the next episode as well. Biding their time, getting passes moving, getting players moved in and out, all these sort of chess pieces, but it is 100% pragmatism. I guess one man's pragmatism could be seen as negative, but for me it's I'm going to evolve to situations and teams and seasons and clubs and players as best as I can. And like I said the other week, over the last 17 years, I don't think you can say that he's not evolved.
No, I would agree. I've written about this as well. It's, well, these are the tools I've got. It makes most sense to use them in this way, where managers do fit into that puritanical but aesthetic for the sake of aesthetic is what's Wenger. Is the absolute ultimate of that, and started to try and cover his lack of success with something more higher and mighty. Anyway, David, Chelsea and Liverpool meet again. These old friends of Champions League battles, not in the semi-finals this time, but the quarters. Anfield, the first leg.
Pass on my condolences to you about these two of all the teams to do this to you.
Usually,
of all of them,
never let me do. Well, there was a wee bit of carelessness in the last meeting, but my goodness me. And at Anfield first, which I think is an interesting dynamic, and Torres does what Torres was doing, what he did against Real Madrid, Davey, and get Liverpool on the front foot. But they found something within themselves. Big Ivanovic doing what Big Ivanovic could do, actually, and then Drogba given that bit of daylight, and I mean 3-1 away from home, it's kind of done. I think a lot of people thought it was done, and then Liverpool did what they could do and really put the shitters up everything. 2-0 up at half time. It's level, but they're behind in away goals. But then again, there's strength there. There's a bit of a ding dong. Alex, by the way, what a goal. But plenty to go here. 4-4 at Stamford Bridge in the end. But a different tone from at least the first one.
Yeah, who would ever have seen this between these two sides? They've had these epic, suffocating, can't look away for a second pressure games famously for the last few seasons, and then they served this up, a tennis score of an aggregate. Torres gets him off to a dream start. Chelsea don't panic, though. Very mature team. We mention a lot about this Chelsea side in this era, and you see this here. He scored a hell of a lot of goals, old Ivanovic, didn't he?
He really did, by the way. Huge arse, but he got up. And I wonder, Davey, we've talked about this, right? Mourinho buys this team, ingrains them with a sense of, organisation. What a nice marriage, though, with Hiddink. Very calm, very affable kind of coach. You get Ray Wilkins there as well. I just wonder, short-termist, and they'll win their FA Cup and whatever. But I just wonder if that's just at the moment, just a nice little marriage.
Yeah, I think very much so, because the Mourinho thing that we mentioned, but these boys are a bit more grown up now. They are aware of their worth. They know what they've done. He has instilled in them this winning attitude and this, as we mentioned, almost ability to manage himself. Hiddink comes in and doesn't say, right, lads, I want you to forget things you've done or whatever. He comes in and says, you're all good players. Here's little tweaks to make you a little bit better. Similar to what we're seeing, I think, with Slot. at Liverpool. I do not need to reinvent this wheel. I trust you. I respect you. And they get the respect back. And you're right. It was a perfect arrangement. The second leg feels a bit weird because it's a big tie. Weird. It's Chelsea versus Liverpool. But Chelsea are 3-1 up, and I don't think there's anybody. I don't think Liverpool fans thought they would do it. If it'd been 3-1 from the other leg and it's at Anfield, different kettle of fish. But and then Chelsea don't really start. Chelsea get caught between how do we play this? We're 3-1 up. Do we just see this out? And Liverpool don't meekly accept. They are terrific in the opening half hour. And Chelsea are struggling to put the car in the right gear, I think. At half time, they do reset. They come out very, very strongly. Drogba with his customary goal. He got one on both legs, but his customary goal gets them back on. And that calms everybody down a little bit. Alex then, as you mentioned, makes it 2 each. But again, Liverpool come. Lucas, Coy, and they need one more at this stage. And you're thinking they could they? But Frankie Lampard pops up. He gets his goals, and a terrifically entertaining, more entertaining for a neutral than I think anyone had the right to expect for a game that was 3-1 after the first leg. And credit to Liverpool who gave it absolutely everything they had. Chelsea, I think that they're never conceding 4 to anyone really in a game that they don't spend the first 40 minutes kind of wondering how they should approach it. Yeah. But that professionalism, and to put it into context, Martin, that how good they are is they're a side who can score 4 goals in one half against Liverpool under Benitez.
If they needed it.
But the really impressive performance was Anfield. And the thing was, we've seen teams on a similar level. Chelsea are an excellent side, but we've seen big teams. We've seen it in the round before. Go to Anfield and lose their head. Chelsea never even threatened for a second to do that in that first game.
Both captains missing for that second leg. I think Terry suspended, Gerrard injured. Don't know if that makes any difference. There was we've talked a lot tonight about duels and centre forwards and defenders. There's a moment where Didier Drogba just finishes Jamie Carragher off, and he did not enjoy that particular tussle. He just battered him in a fair way.
He refers to it. He speaks about it even now. He said, I mean, there's a famous one, Rob, you'll remember it, the 4-1 at Anfield, where Didier Drogba, I mean, he wipes his arse with Jamie Carragher for 92 minutes. And Carragher actually jokes about it now, not just that match. He said, I hated playing him. He said, because physically, I couldn't impose. If there's a high ball coming up, I need to just jump to put him off because I'm not going to win it. He knows it and I know it. I loved Drogba because of this. He was a terrific technical player. He had, silky touches, link-up play. But a striker of his size, physical ability, the knowledge how to use that physical ability, by the way, not just he has it, but how to put it into practice, allied with that pace. Didier Drogba, at his best for a couple of seasons, was your dictionary definition unplayable, because he would get you with something. He would get you with his pace. He would get you with his hold up and slip somebody in. If he got a chance, he would finish it. If you wanted a battle, if you wanted to go and kick him, you're probably not going to win that either. And for somebody who grew up, supporting Rangers and loving Mark Hateley, I think Drogba was the next evolution of that type of player, where you think he is a very good footballer, but you would also want him in your side for a scrap. And Carragher, as I say, he has a good sense of humour about it, but he says, those battles, I dreaded them. And as Martin mentions here, you can maybe see that in this game. Why? Because Drogba just, all the little tricks, because Carragher wasn't the quickest, and he wasn't the biggest. He was a decent size, but he wasn't, Vidic. All the little tricks that he had, all the experience he picked up, everything he did, Drogba had a counter to. And he said he was just, one way he put it, he said it one time, he said he was a puzzle I could not work out. And that is a perfect description of their battles.
Rob?
Just a couple of quick things. Those are great points about Drogba. And actually, Man United played him pretty well, but he always had something. So, for example, the 07 Cup final, which was dog of a game, he ends up scoring the winner with a really smart, clever goal. Yeah, I think he's an all-time great, Drogba, slightly underrated. Yeah. Possibly like Chelsea. Quick thing on this rivalry. So they played 10 Champions League games around that period. First 7 games, 5 goals. Last 3, 17. Some rivalries burn themselves out. It's almost like this burned itself in. They just thought, we can't grim struggle anymore. Let's just gloves off and see what happens.
It's almost like after sitting watching 10 psychological thrillers in the cinema, they said, we need a knockabout comedy. You know, we need a...
Chuck's super bad on, just for the we'll speak about Drogba in more detail next week. I think it's probably fair to say. Rob, United drawn against Porto, again, a team that you know relatively well. You mentioned your comfort and ease and oozing with confidence after the first leg draw in the San Siro. How confident were you after the 2-2 draw at Old Trafford?
Not very, and I revisited a typically doom-mongering piece I wrote on the Whistle, basically citing. So when Blackburn won the league, towards the end of that season, Ferguson put in his diary, the Devon Lock stuff. There was a phrase, when it goes quickly, and there's nothing you could do about it. And I cited that in reference to United because they had the former collapse since Inter. They'd obviously had the Liverpool defeat Fulham. The Makeda goal was 3 days earlier, but they were looking really tired. They were lucky to draw 2-2 at home to Porto. And I remember Carrigan's goals had stinkers. So there was suddenly, from nowhere, because the season had gone, they hadn't been brilliant, but they'd been comfortable and in control of everything. And suddenly they were just ravaged by doubt. And I don't think it was, albeit that I could be very pessimistic, it wasn't just me. Definitely not. They were outplayed by a good Porto side at home. Albeit Porto scored a late equaliser, but the result flattered United. They were just, I tell you what they were, and they had not been for a long time in Europe. They were ragged. And that was really confusing because they had become, like you've all said, this really grown up, really accomplished European team. And suddenly they were just ragged again. 2 away goals, you think, geez, you're in a bit of bother here. But they kind of rediscovered themselves for the second leg.
Adam, we've talked about evolution of strikers a wee bit tonight, and pretty much throughout the whole series, that's kind of the point of these big deep dives. You pick up these wider trends. I remember watching that second leg in the Dragao, and Ronaldo did something. I thought, we've all seen long range efforts, right? Of course we have, and banana shots from the 1978 World Cup. I'm not sure I'd seen that goal before. It looked like a cheat. It looked like CGI. It looked like something just wasn't quite normal or human, and it was something that we were going to get used to over the next decade. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. I think everybody, including the Porto keeper, was caught by surprise. I guess when it's so early as well in the game, like Rob said, Porto's tails are probably up because they've got that last gasp equaliser. They've got the 2 away goals there, and then for United to get that win, and then I think be as professional as they were. I know we sort of trailed it last week, but Rooney playing off the left puts in a power of work in these games. Just selflessness as well. He doesn't need to do it. He's, for my money, probably a different type of striker, but a better option than Berbatov up top, I think. Particularly in these sort of away games, but he just does it for the team, does the running. And yeah, it's a nicely well balanced team, in fairness at that point. And I think Ronaldo, you're starting to see it now. Again, it's one of those when did it happen type things. Like when does the change happen? When does he suddenly go from being this guy who as a winger maybe
and all that,
could end up being one of these little floaty wingers that will go to Barcelona and do okay and then be back in Porto by the time they're 30. I'm not sure that was ever really going to be the case, but I don't think anybody's seen the sheer explosion. And we mentioned it last season, I think, when he got the 42 goals, maybe even the year before he scored a barrel load as well. But you're really starting to see the technique. I think now you're starting to see that physicality that will go and define him, I think. And that's all him. We have these debates about who's the better player, Ronaldo or Messi. There's no doubt that Messi has, and for my money, 10 times that, not 10 times, but much more natural talent in terms of being a footballer. But the way that Ronaldo just through sheer force of will made himself the most physical specimen in Europe, and
Ronaldo
I think it's just incredible. Yeah,
Ronaldo squeezed out every last possible, still is doing it, every last possible goal, his dedication. And people can talk about his selfishness and his, and all the rest of it. But I mean, his determination to be the absolute best with what he was given. Now, Messi is slightly different in that, as you say, he was born, I think, with more natural talent. However, he did it too, because you wouldn't have got to the level and the amount of goals and the amount of assists and the amount of trophies without that as well. We've all seen naturally talented players who don't think they have to work at it and have careers that are probably less than they could and probably should have been, because they get by on just the talent. But in Ronaldo's case, it was everything he was weak at, he improved on, because he worked to do so. Like the first couple of years, Rob, you watched him when he arrived at United. A ball in the air to him, he looked terrified.
Literally,
I am not competing for that. And he, by this stage, which we're only talking 5-6 years later, he is a phenomenal hit. I mean, Ferguson famously said if he didn't have pace, he could have made it as an old-fashioned British style centre forward, because we could put crosses into the box for him and he'd get on the end of them. I remember about this time, the 42 goals was one, Adam, because that season, the amount of, it was all types, it was Shearer-esque. There were pingers, there were tap-ins, there were dribbling past 3 or 4 players, old-style Ronaldo goals. There were headers. And I just thought, what even is he now? Is he a striker? Because I can't think of many better finishers out there. But he's also on the wing and he can glide past people. He just was a complete all-round. Whereas Messi was more, that is just a foot. God has lifted this little chap down in the way he did with Maradona and placed him on a football field. And it was that sort of, he's your, when you're a little kid, he's what you dream of being. The way I always put it was, when you're a little kid, you dream of playing like Messi. When you're about 20, you dream about playing like Ronaldo, when you're a wee bit older, because that power and dynamism allied to the skill. But they were fabulous to watch, and I never really understood, as a neutral, I never really understood why I was supposed to pick one, and I couldn't just think both of them were brilliant.
Such is modern life, really. Davey, very quickly before we wrap up here, yet more old friends, and I think this is very much a feature of where the Champions League has evolved to, that you're just seeing the same fixtures so often. It's Arsenal Villarreal, semi-final of 3 years before. Again, first leg as first leg should be. It's 1-1, but Arsenal very comfortable. Get on the score sheet early with Walcott and comfortable 3-0 winners and back in the semi-finals.
Yeah, I think the experience of that the semi-final against Villarreal helped Martin, conscious of what I said earlier about them, and I still think it's valid. But Arsenal sort of knew that this time about how Villarreal would set out against them. So the first leg, you're right, 1-1. Arsenal don't overcommit. They are sensible out there. At home, they were very good. And this Arsenal team, as we mentioned, everyone knows, was capable of that. When they were on song, they were a very, very difficult side to play against, because they could manufacture chances seemingly out of nothing, 2-3 passes and pinpoint, and they were in. And Villarreal have to work very, very hard to stay in the game. They do get a bit of a foothold at the start of the second, but 2 quick goals and the game is completely done. Not always something we've said about Arsenal, even I would argue better Arsenal teams than this in the history of this show. I think Arsenal managed this very professionally across 2 legs.
They did. Gents, that'll do as I think for this particular episode. We'll all be back next week. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much, as always.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Cheers, David.
Really is my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All roads lead to Rome. Plenty of drama, brilliance in the way. Has anyone seen Leo Messi score a header, by the way? Until next time, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.